Legal Pagers. This episode of the Legal Page podcast features one of my legal clients, Libby Rothschild, who I've not only worked with professionally as her attorney, but also became friends with over the course of the past year. Libby is a total genius in the dietitian world and has helped so many in the nutrition and dietetics industry. She is a business coach and social media marketing expert, and her work inspires female registered dietitians to attract and convert leads in their virtual private practice. Now, I've invited Libby to come on today to share all about her special technique with online sales using Instagram marketing. Libby is an expert at getting leads and converting clients through Instagram. So if you want to make more moolah and better serve your following on Instagram, which I know we all do, this episode is about to blow your mind. Here is the episode, Legal Pagers. You're listening to the Legal Page podcast, where we chat about life and business with a legal twist. I'm Paige, attorney and photographer helping online businesses and creatives tackle their business dreams without breaking out in hives. No more legal mumbo jumbo. This podcast features simple, bite-sized advice that'll have you legally legit in no time. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hello, Legal Page listeners. I am so excited because today is the day that I get to interview one of my really good industry friends, and she's also a legal client of mine, Libby Rothschild. Libby, thank you so much for joining us.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me on. I'm a fellow listener, and now I'm excited to be a guest.
And you guys, Libby also has her own bomb-ass podcast. And I know I introduced Libby at the beginning of this episode. Libby, I know you very well. I know your business really well, but I would love for you to tell the Legal Pagers tuning in today what you do, why you do it, why you love what you do, and kind of like your story, like how you got to this dietitian, Libby Rothschild, I would call it like empire.
Well, thank you. Absolutely. I'd love to share my story. I think that's a great part that to segue into what I'm talking about today, which is selling on Instagram, and telling your story is a huge part of doing that. So a little bit about me. I'm a business coach. I consider myself a social media marketing expert, and I am a registered dietitian. And I help my colleagues. I help my colleagues with sales and marketing skills that we were not taught in school. And what I specifically help my colleagues with includes virtual private practice sales and marketing skills on Instagram. And my past includes, I worked as a clinical dietitian in a hospital for 5 years. And I felt that I was not fully, I didn't feel as respected as I could have been. And I felt that I didn't get paid what I deserved. And I felt that my ability to create an impact was, it was really just decreased. And I wanted to send a message out to the masses, and I kept trying, and I felt that I was offered low rates, and I felt that I wasn't the most important part of the team. And what I found from networking with my colleagues is that they felt the same way too. So what I did is I found some opportunities as a dietitian to do some consulting work. I did some teaching for dental residents and medical students and medical residents, and I was really excited that I got paid a great rate to do this. And I was sharing my story with a friend of mine one day, 2 years ago. And she said to me, wow, you're doing this teaching, which seems out of the box. Why don't you tell people about it? So I started sharing my journey on social media. And 2 years later, I quit my job and became a full-time business coach, now helping my colleagues do what I did, which is position your sales and marketing skills and using Instagram marketing to do so.
It's so cool. I love your story. So this was about 2 years ago that you went full-time, you said?
No, 2 years ago is when I started telling my story.
I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I became full-time just 4 months ago in my career. Yeah.
You're killing it. Also, like, we don't need to get into this here, but it's so interesting for people listening in because lots of us are side hustlers, right? Like, we have full-time jobs, we're working a 9 to 5, or we have like 2 different businesses that we're trying to decide like where to put most of our efforts into. And it's really interesting that we kind of did something similar, honestly, with having like a professional degree and doing something in the professional traditional world, and then getting our feelers out into those professions and being like, okay, I think there's like bigger things that we can do online to help people maybe get out of the traditional world in our professions that, you know, they could feel bogged down in. I find it really interesting that you're totally doing it with, and it's dietitians primarily that you serve, correct?
Yes. I market to dietitians. I do sell to some people who are health coaches and professionals, but I primarily registered dietitians and females. Yeah, that's who I market to.
And then are these female dietitians like they're probably working some type of like clinical job, correct? That are maybe looking for your services to like do something on their own, go off on their own. What is that process looking like for like the stage of where someone would come to you?
Yeah, really, really good question. There's two types of dietitians that come to me. The majority of the dietitians who purchase my services would be the dietitians who are newer in online marketing, and they either have a clinical job or they might be in private practice already, but they're not using online marketing, and they're definitely not leveraging their Instagram marketing to help either sell their services or to create multiple revenue streams, such as digital products, courses, etc. So that's one type of dietitian. The other type of dietitian is already using social media marketing, but they want to increase even more, create systems, build a team, and they would be considered the intermediate dietitian that I serve. The primary market is the beginner folks, but I do market to both types of dietitians during their journey.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So yeah, beginners and then people like scaling in different respects that you can help with consulting for that. Obviously, the big niche here for you is the online sales process using Instagram marketing, and your Instagram is just amazing. And I am fascinated by it, Libby, because I am not in your world. And that's why I'm so excited for you to be on the podcast today, because I talk to lots of wedding industry professionals, but as I've expanded kind of my legal clientele, I'm coming more into the online coaching world. There's lots of health coaches that have reached out to me. And what you guys do is so different in the way that you're leveraging social media. So just start by telling us all the things. I feel like you're just a wealth of information for this.
Oh, I'm excited. I love talking about this stuff. Yeah. So as far as leveraging, a lot of the dietitians that I help and the ones that I work with are either they're doing insurance or they are doing self-pay, but a lot of them have a service-based offer and they're not aware of the, numerous opportunities that they can take advantage of, which can include group programs, online courses, digital products, even just increasing their reputation for, it could be a brand deal, it could be speaking, right? And so there's so many different opportunities that whether you're new in practice or whether you're seasoned, that you can be taking advantage of through using online marketing. So actually, it's very funny. A lot of the people who I serve, the first thing I have to do is explain to them the power of using Instagram and how it's helped me go full-time in my business. And I've helped so many other dietitians use it and increase it and hit their sales goals. But a lot of dietitians and a lot of people I help are not aware that that's possible. So the first step is showing you that you can absolutely market and sell effectively, whether it's a service-based offer like coaching or whether it's a digital product like a course, or even it could be maybe an ebook or something.
Okay. So that's kind of like the first step in like the big overview of this, right? So like you're talking to your clients, you're figuring out where they're doing this. And then I know you have kind of like a 3-step process, right? For online sales and using Instagram marketing to drive those online sales. So let's just dive into it. Like, what are your 3 steps?
Absolutely. So I'll break them down and then I'll go into a little bit more detail. They include defining how you'll make profit. That's number 1. Number 2 includes setting up your Instagram link in bio to help support sales. And number 3, niching down your message.
And this is so good, you guys, because I'm just going to let you know, like, obviously her realm is just primarily serving female dietitians, but I know from watching Libby for a while, and if you, obviously we're going to link Libby like crazy in this episode. So you guys are going to go follow her and she's the best ever. But when she's breaking these down, I want all of you guys like listening in to be like, how can I use this to leverage my own business? Because really, Libby, like this is also just like service-based, right? On Instagram. Absolutely. And like, anyone can do this. So Libby is your guru here, you guys. Like really, I want you to just take this big picture and then narrow that down to your service offerings, like whatever business that you own. So anyway, I just wanted to say that because those three are like, I mean, those are big picture. And I didn't want people to feel like it's only pertaining to like who you actually teach. So listen in closely to how she goes through these steps, you guys.
And I appreciate that because it's true. And I'll give a few examples of how these are. You can apply these for any type of niche market, even though who I serve includes registered dietitians. And I'll explain that as I go through the steps. So I first recommend that you define how you're going to make profit. In this step, it's really important that you get clear with how you want to make money in your business. And then finally, after you're very clear with how you want to make money, is it a service? Is it a product? If you're starting out or you're side hustling, my philosophy includes starting with service-based offers and getting really clear with what your audience wants and needs so that you can adjust your offer to really help solve their problem. And then if you're able to do that, you can down the line create, products and ebooks and courses. But I do believe you first need to get really clear with one-on-one service-based offers. That's part of my philosophy. So when you're thinking about how you want to make money online or how you want to make money in your business, then the second piece of that would be, how do you want to use Instagram to support how you want to make profit in your business? And so when you're getting really clear with how Instagram is going to play a role, then you need to create your profile and your content strategy and your story strategy, all to support how you want to make profit in your business, and use Instagram as your primary, in my case, in my client's case, your primary lead source, meaning that my business is built from Instagram marketing. I didn't pay $1 to market what I do. And this is my full-time business now. All of my clients find me on Instagram. It's about 95%.
So what if people are having a conflict? And I'm sure you get asked this question a lot with like, well, where does Instagram play that role? You're like, okay, so figure that out for yourself. But I know a lot of us listening too, and I am like raising my hand here high. I've had this issue before. And sometimes I fall into this rut where I'm just like talking, but I don't really know who I'm talking to or what my end goal is. So how would you suggest people kind of figure out and narrow down how Instagram can play the best role for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So that would have to do with probably step 3, and that's the niche framework.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I love, by the way, your episode 12. For those of you who haven't listened, Paige's podcast about my big biz philosophy: find the niche, fill the niche, kill the niche. That's an incredible episode that supports my step 3 very well, which includes niching down. So first, want to mention we just went through defining how you're going to make profit. Second step is setting up your Instagram to sell. And then I'll answer Paige's question, which is about the niching down and getting clear on your messaging, which can happen with time. And I'll use myself as an example. I didn't have everything figured out when I first started it. My messaging evolved.
Right. So these are more just like writing. I mean, obviously I'm ahead of myself. So you just really want us to like write down the answers to those, right? Big picture. How do you want to make money? How do you want to monetize using Instagram? And then how do you see Instagram playing a role? That's kind of all you want us to do in step 1, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. All right. Now I'm ready. I'm with you. Step 2.
Yes. Step 2. I'm a very how-to kind of gal. So step 2 would be at being really clear your profile set up as a business. So what that means is that your bio on Instagram should explain what do you do, how do you do it, and why do you do it, so that you're really clear to support step 1, which is how you're going to make profit. And I think it's really important that the bio on your Instagram feed, that link in your bio is going to support how you want to make money. And it sounds simple, but I help a lot of people who either don't use their link in bio or they're not using their link in bio correctly. So it's important that your link in your bio on Instagram Instagram, you're either using it to funnel leads or prospects to either apply for your services, if that's how you want to monetize, or if you want to build your email list, because maybe you want to, build your funnel and you want to send out regular emails and nurture through email marketing. But however you decide that you want to set that up, it's really important that you use your link in bio effectively and you use a call to action in your bio so that you can drive traffic to help you increase your profit.
Okay, I love it. And I think lots of people don't use their link in bio correctly. What is, I guess, before we move on, what is one big mistake that you see the most with links in bios?
My opinion on the big mistake is too many options. So you're giving people 5 or 6 options of what to do. And I recommend keeping it simple. So if you use Linktree, I recommend keeping the options minimum, because typically when people have to make more clicks, they get confused and distracted and shiny object syndrome. So my philosophy is less is best, less words in your bio, less things to do, less calls to action. Just keep it really simple and clear so that your prospect knows what to do and where to go.
Awesome. I completely agree with you. I am a firm believer in one click. So I was taught this by a mentor of mine too. So that's why I always kind of ask that question to people who are talking about Instagram, because obviously there's multiple ways to do it, but I have learned from experience too. For all of you listening in, you should go click on a bunch of people's links and bios and see what irritates you. This is what someone told me to do, Libby. And I don't know if you've ever told someone to do this, but I went and did 10 different people. And I had the paradox of choice and confusion when I would click and it'd bring me to Linktree or something similar. Sometimes people set that up on their own website account. And then you have to figure out again what you were clicking on, so the bio would tell you click here to go to this, but then you have to think about it again. Wait, what was I just clicking on? Because we have a 3-second retention span nowadays. And and I just learned really quickly that I was I just want the link to take me exactly where it says it's going to go. And I know that that's hard, right? Because you are constantly changing your link, but is that something you do?
You mean having my link be one link?
Yes. Yeah. Constantly changing it to what you're pointing down to. So
really good question. I think it depends on your, what you're selling. So if you're in a phase where you're trying to promote, maybe it's you're running a group program and you're trying to accept applications, then I would probably have that in the link in bio. I actually don't change mine often. Mine is always, from when I've started Instagram, it has always been to build my list. Mm-hmm. And then if folks want to apply for my program, I'll mention it in my coaching. I'll mention it in my story. And if you don't have the swipe up, if you don't have 10,000 followers, which is totally fine, you can use a bit.ly link, which is a great way to track in your stories. But there are a lot of different ways to do this, but I will say I'm not a fan of switching your link all the time, because once you switch one thing in your bio, you have to be really mindful of how your bio reads as a whole and not just from that link. There's the call to action, and how does that call to action translate with the rest of how your bio looks and makes your ideal client feel when they go to your profile.
Oh my gosh, you just taught me something too. I'm I must go do this now. That's so true. Because someone else was you need to change your link in bio all the time when you're pointing to that specific call to action. But then I didn't even take a second and be wait, but how is that translating with the rest of my bio? And how are those coming across to an ideal client? So that's a really, really good point, Libby.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of strategy, and I'm glad you like to talk about all the minutia with me, because I have strong opinions about every aspect of Instagram, from your captions to your post to your call to action to your bio to your story strategy. It all means something. It's all things that I've learned that help me sell and help my clients sell.
Yeah. Well, okay. That's a great example. And people you, of course, you can reach out to Libby if you have more questions about the link in bio, and you've heard different things from different mentors. But of course, this is the way Libby does it. This is the way she teaches, and she is clearly getting success from her students because of it. So, okay. So we're setting up our Instagram bio. We're explaining like in our bio what we do, how we do it, and why we do it in very minimal characters, obviously. Yep. And then we have a call to action, and the link in bio is very important, which we just talked about. And then what is the next step?
Yeah. So you summed that up very well. The next step would be step 3. That's focusing on my favorite topic, and that's niching down. So I feel very strongly about niche marketing. And what that means is that you are clearly defining the problem that you solve and who you serve and the specific type of person that you serve in the market. And I believe that, niching down helps you stand out, and it helps you, position yourself as an authority, and it sets you up to sell very effectively with regard to online marketing.
Okay. So how do we even start, right? Because niching down is like thrown around in the industry, online industry all of the time. And I think a lot of us too, that are entrepreneurs, like we want to do all the things, right? We're multi-passionate. Lots of us, we want to serve many different clients in many different respects. And I think I hear most from people in the wedding industry as a whole is they either want to like be a service-based company and like serve clients really well. So I'm just going to like take the easiest example, which is like a photographer. And they're, say, serving their photography clients, shooting weddings, shooting sessions, yada, yada. And that's like their primary service. But then people want to expand, of course, into like education or mentoring or those type of things. So how would you tell people to niche down? Like, what's the process for them to kind of start really narrowing that down for themselves?
Absolutely. So the process, I would say, is first you want to define the problem that you solve in the market and get really clear on why people pay you. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's important to understand there are many different definitions of what niche means. And I think this is where the confusion comes in. So, you can argue that wedding photography is niche, right? And I would argue that it's not. Elopement wedding photography would be more niche. Mm-hmm. So being really specific and clear on what exactly does that mean. Like if I were business coach, I don't think that's niche. If I specifically focus on Instagram sales, that's a lot more clear. That's the one thing I do. It's the thing I know how to do well. It's the thing I've given results to hundreds of registered dietitians for. And we'll get to the target market part in just a minute. But again, the niche is what you do and why people pay you for the problem. And it should be the biggest problem that you're solving in the market. And if you're general, if you have something, if you offer multiple services and, if you're a service provider and you're not exactly sure which way you want to go about and how you want to niche down, I think it's important to consider a few different things. Like, let's say if you're in the wedding business and you want to get more clear about what aspect you want to niche down to, I think it's good to explore a little bit about what you feel that you align with. And this is an exercise I do with a lot of my clients, is getting them to think about their higher purpose and their meaning and how they can connect that with the work that they do. Mm-hmm. And then just taking that leap and trying to experiment with niching down. So you're trying to position yourself in the market as, let's say, going off the example of an elopement wedding photographer. And if you use hashtags of that nature and you start to, position yourself in that way, and then you start to get clients, and then those clients refer you. That's how I started what I'm doing. I started, slowly positioning myself in this category, and then the referrals and, the growth happened so fast just because I was able to position myself as being extremely unique with what I do and how I do it and who I help.
Okay. Super straightforward. I think that's easy for people to really narrow down for themselves.
A lot of people get scared because they don't want to pigeonhole themselves.
Yes.
And there's a lot of fear in entrepreneurship anyway. And I understand the fear and how you feel afraid. But the irony is that when you get more clear about what you do, you actually are attracting more people to you. And it becomes an easier way for you to stand out, because specifically when you look at Instagram as a marketing tool, it's saturated with, for the example of wedding photography, right? I don't know how many hits are on that hashtag, but for what I do and who I help, it's extremely saturated. There's, 100,000 registered dietitian nutritionists in the United States. And if that is the statistic. And with that being said, what makes one dietitian stand out from another? It's her ability to position herself as being unique in the market. And how does she do that? She pulls from her experience, her philosophy and point of view, and that helps her align with her higher purpose, and it helps her stand out and sell more. And that same exact example can be applied in the wedding photography space and for other similar service providers.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm just like listening to all of this over here, and I'm sure everyone listening in is like, preach, Libby, preach. Okay, so we've defined kind of this problem that we solve. We're starting to niche down, but obviously there's like a market we're trying to serve.
Absolutely. So there is some confusion with your target market and your ideal client. Mm-hmm. So the target market are the type of people who you serve. So that would be, if we're looking broadly, I'm going to try to stay on this wedding idea because I think it's more possibly relatable with your audience. If you're looking at serving women who want to get married, that would be a target market. But if you're looking for women who are 20 who live in Montana, that would be a specific ideal client. So you want to first look broadly at the target market, let's say millennial women who are looking to get married. And then more specifically, what are the characteristics? Is it her, her first time getting married? Where in the world does she live? Does she have any children? So getting really more specific about that type of person and using both the ability to be clear with your target market and ideal client will help you position yourself more in the market and create more clear content and connect more, significantly and deeply with who you're trying to market and sell to.
Okay, so we're analyzing all of this. You're niching down. You're figuring out a problem. I'm sure like at this stage, Libby, like it's more just hypothesizing, writing things down, like really just trying to see the larger picture of who you're trying to serve, why you're serving them, what problem and pain point that you're solving. And a lot of us listening in and that are in the entrepreneur world, like we've heard of ideal client before. Like there's tons of exercises to nail down your ideal client. Obviously, Libby's not necessarily going into that, but she's just saying like you really want to narrow that down to very, very, very specific characteristics. So Libby, once we do that, and I feel like I've done this before, but I think my biggest thing is like, then what do I do on Instagram?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think building community would be the next step. So when you're able to identify, and the idea is that you're choosing your target market and ideal client based on also your point of view. So it's easier to market, let's say that you have similarities with this person or you have something about her you can relate with, that makes it easier for you to build community. So if that's the case, let's say we're going off of, Montana, I don't know if it would be newlyweds or some kind of hashtag that would be location based, similar to this type of person that you're marketing to. If you create community around that, whether it be that you are looking on Instagram or you're networking with people who service in that similar niche, that can help you position yourself as an authority by association.
Okay. And then how are we constantly showing up on Instagram? Like, what is the biggest way to do that?
I still think that, content is king, and I believe in posting on the actual feed 5 times a week. Every time you post, you have an ability to use hashtags for free SEO. And you want to choose, I have a philosophy where you choose hashtags that not only have to do with your niche, but also your target market and ideal client. So we're going from broad to a little bit more specific about the associated characteristics. And so when you show up and you're able to post content consistently, and then you're also able to engage and interact in the comments, that's going to help you get seen. Additionally, the stories are a really important, great opportunity for you to show up a little bit more organically, where it might be less curated and you can check in. Like today, I'll, gonna give this podcast episode recording a shout out and then let my followers know what I'm doing and how what I'm doing plays a role with what my higher purpose is, which is really helping, women and dietitians specifically with marketing and sales. And so I'm constantly sharing aspects of my life that support my bottom line and my higher purpose, and being able to do so in my stories further creates that community that I'm trying so hard to foster on a daily basis.
Yes. I'm like just blown away right now. And it's so interesting because we hear a lot about Instagram, but just having that like boiled down, some people just need like numbers, right? Post 5 times a week, try to do it as much as possible. I love the engaging in the hashtags. I've heard that a lot thrown around, like, are hashtags still used? Like, is it working? Yes, you guys, it's free SEO is what Libby's saying. What about solving these people's problems? Like, how are we doing that through Instagram?
Really good golden question. That is what I spend most of my time with my clients.
Okay.
Is creating content and adjusting your content, and content being the post on your feed, whether it's an IGTV, an image, an infographic, whatever it might be. So the post and your stories, and again, every aspect of your Instagram marketing should be around the main biggest problem or top 2 problems or pains that you solve in the market. And even if you're unclear about your exact niche, let's say you haven't gone that specific yet, if you could start, let's say you're a photographer and you're solving a problem of maybe misinformation or something that has to do with what your ideal client would pay you for. If you can find a way to connect and solve problems consistently, on your feed and through your messaging and your stories, that's going to help you stand out, even if you don't have all the pieces we've discussed today all aligned and figured out.
Okay. And I know you have kind of like 3 little steps that you go through, like every time when posting something. What should we walk through in our brains about like, what's the problem? Like, how do we solve this? Like those type of things. Like what should we be thinking every single time we post something?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when you're posting, I want you to think of, is this content solving a problem, solving the biggest problem that my ideal client faces? The second thing, is it consistent with my brand messaging and philosophy? Mm-hmm. And then third, is this going to create community and serve, like, if possible, create community is ideal, and serving your higher purpose would be even more ideal. For example, my higher purpose is female empowerment. So anytime I can lend to the higher purpose with my content, that's like bonus points. If I can create a post that also speaks to female empowerment. And if I can't always do that every time, that's okay, as long as I'm able to solve the biggest problem and create community. And you also learn through time. Not every single post is going to be a slam dunk, and vanity metrics are not the only measurement that you can look for. And I can name what the top 3 are according to my philosophy. But ideally, like, the number one thing you want to be doing is finding a way to solve a problem through your content marketing.
Yeah. I'm like speechless. Yes, totally. As I'm like going through this with you, I'm just thinking too, like, if I was on the other side of listening to this podcast episode, you're talking a lot about posts. And I think, well, I know in this wedding industry world that a lot of people are tuning in from, and we're getting more and more engagement on the Legal Paige podcast from outside of that industry, which is awesome. But speaking specifically for that industry that I primarily serve, like, posts are super important is what you're talking about. And obviously we're like trying to solve a problem. Say we post, I'm just trying to like narrow this down to like a 1-day type of situation. So I'm posting something on Instagram, and say it's like a wedding photo, and then I'm trying to like serve my clients in that way. Say I'm a planner. We'll start with planner. So I got this photo from a photographer. I'm solving the pain point of like all of the things that happen the day of. Say they're like trying to pitch day of services. That's the pain point they're solving. That's the niche they're in. Because like you said, like wedding planner, that's too broad. And there's lots of different types of wedding planners. So say this particular client that they're trying to reach to only wants services for day of coordination. And that's like the post that this pain point and problem that they're solving. After you do that post and you're engaging on that post, do you have any type of advice for people tuning in on like how you can coordinate that with stories and like DMs? And I think people really get lost in that, because if you're trying to be organic on Instagram stories, like sometimes it gets away from the main like problem solving point of the post that you have that day. Is there a good way that you would suggest people kind of keep an overall theme day to day, week to week, something along those lines?
Yeah, really good question. And that can get really high level strategy. I follow an 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, I solve pain points with my stories. 20% of the time, I share something about my personal life. And so when I do that, it helps create a little bit of a framework for me. I will say having an idea ahead of time of how you can create community with your stories, especially if your business, if something is time sensitive, I would encourage going live, and I would definitely encourage on your stories, planning ahead of time, being really clear with the pains and the frustrations that you're solving and finding a way to link that with what you do in your story, and being really creative with that is going to help. One example I can say on this story is that what I'll do is I'll have this happens to me quite often. A post on my feed will cause a reaction when I hit on a strong pain point among my target market. Mm-hmm. And what I'll do is on my stories, I'll use the question box to continue that conversation. And it creates like a further engaging conversation in my stories from the post on my feed. And it's solving the same problem in a way where I give people the opportunity to have a voice in my stories because I'll share their responses. So that's one way you can do that.
Oh, that's a good example. Yeah, that's really helpful. I think just the 80-20 rule is like a good thing for people to follow, and people like, very specific percentages and numbers and things that they're supposed to do. And yeah, that was really helpful, Libby. I know you were like, 5 days, like for posts. And then if people follow the 80-20 rule for still solving the problems. And then also, because I know lots of people just use stories to like talk about their lives. And sometimes I go through Instagram and I'm like, I don't even know what you're doing. Like, who are you serving? And like, why are you even on here? Like, they're acting more as a consumer. And I think that's really interesting when people are just doing consumer-esque things on stories when they're actually a business owner.
I would argue that I can't give a number. A lot of people who I help and who come to me are not treating Instagram like a business tool. And the behaviors we're discussing today are all about using Instagram as remember, it's your sales and marketing tool. And when you treat something like a sales and marketing tool, there are specific behaviors associated with that. Yes, it's you and your brand and your point of view and your opinion and philosophy. And at the same time, when you have clear sales goals that you're looking to hit, you need to follow associated behaviors in order to reach those goals. And that includes being really clear and intentional. The worst thing is you don't want someone falling upon your content and feeling a lack of continuity, like you want to be seen as a business owner, even when you are, sharing information that is of your personal life. It should still be a little bit calculated.
Yeah, that's a great way to kind of end your discussion and round out kind of your teaching points here on the online sales process using Instagram marketing. Obviously, you're a social media marketing expert, and a lot of us aren't. But I just kind of want to tie this up with a bow, because as you were saying that, I was like, yes. And Libby said at the beginning, you guys, like, this is free. And I think we're always inundated with like, if you pay for this type of ad, or if you do this, like this will be your ROI. But here, Libby's saying like, really just get specific and know the way that you are marketing as a business on Instagram. You guys keep coming back to these steps that Libby's been talking about. If you're confused, come back to them and work through them every single day that you're on Instagram. So Libby, thank you so much for teaching on all of that. I know your expertise is very valuable, so it's wonderful for these podcast listeners to get that for free.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for chatting with me. It's always a fun conversation.
So you can't go quite yet, because this is the Legal Paige podcast, and I am an attorney. As you know, we have worked together before, and I cannot have guests come on without people listening in and being like, okay, these guests have awesome businesses. They are doing really well for themselves. But obviously, I know that one of the foundations for a good business is ensuring that you're legal and protected. And I think one of the biggest ways that my listeners can kind of walk away from these is not only through all of your phenomenal teaching points, but I always like to ask my guests, like, what are some big legal lessons that you've learned along the way? Because business is a learning experience, life is a learning experience. And I know that you have a few that would be really good to have these listeners hear.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So just share a couple with us. And of course, I'll like interject if I need to add anything in, because I can't help myself, lawyer Paige here.
Yeah. Well, what I have found in growing my business from using Instagram marketing, my business grew a little faster than I had expected, which is great. And with that, the need for contracts was more important than I gave it credit for. And being a small business, contracts is an important topic for everybody. But I think for me, when it came to building my team to help me scale what I do and having those contracts reviewed by Paige was really important to me because there's so much, I like to focus on my genius zone and really just focus on sales and marketing. And there's so much about confidentiality and contracts that I don't understand. So it's been really helpful for me to have that reviewed by, Paige and her expertise and have that help me continue to hit my sales goals and not hold me back, because I don't want anything holding me back from making profit.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the takeaway here for people is like, we get so dialed in and focused in on our client contracts. And we think that's kind of like the be all end all of our protection. When in fact, when we start growing and we bring on team members, like you said, and you're onboarding people and you are growing a business that is acquiring more and more confidential information, this is the biggest hiccup I see for people. And for Libby and I, we've just been discussing lately, like, what is the best way to go about this as her business is growing? And you guys, if you're in that stage, I want you to really take a second and think about your contracts and your agreements and the legalities with the people that are coming onto your team, because that's where I see sticky situations like occurring the most versus like clients, which is, it's a lot easier to go about a client situation. You've got a contract, like you're servicing them. I mean, it's a lot more clear. And I think in the entrepreneur world as a whole, and Libby, I think you can attest to this, is we have relationships with people whether that's virtual or in person. And then those people come on to our team and like, it's just unfortunate. And it's not the same as like having a brick and mortar business where like it's easy to like change things up, let people go, sign contracts here, do this. It's just harder in the entrepreneur world and people just don't think about it as much.
I had no idea. And I agree with everything you're saying. The contract, I thought the contracts with my clients was so important. And I completely had no idea how important it was to have my team onboarding process be as smooth with having the contracts, and the NDAs and everything in order. And so working with you has helped me get that and, my ducks in a row. And it's been really important. And looking back, like I wish I knew ahead of time going into building a team, right? So I learned a little late, like after I built the team, right? And ideally I wanted to have that set up a little bit sooner. So it's been really helpful to have that onboarding process be reviewed legally by Paige. And looking back, I like wish I would have had that done and smoothed out before it was a problem.
Yeah. And I think that's always what I'm trying to teach people. You guys know me. I preach this. I talk about it all the time. Like, you don't want to be reactive. You want to be proactive. Obviously, you can't help situations where you have to be reactive because that's life and we're all going to get through them and it'll be fine. But the biggest thing here is like what Libby's saying. And Libby, it's not just you. I mean, we've had this conversation before. There's so many other people out there where we have, I don't know why, but we're just like taught this workflow process of getting clients on board, and we're going to serve them really well. And our communication is going to be on point with them. And then it's just kind of like haphazard, like throw spaghetti at the wall when we're like actually being a manager of our business and like hiring team members on and expanding, like whether you're going into e-commerce or e-courses or products, like you have tangible products now. I mean, it's really, really interesting that I talk to people and they have this same like moment of, aha, like I need to be doing the same thing that I did with my client contracts and workflow process with the rest of my business. So that's like the biggest thing I could say.
Yeah. And it's a great lesson to learn. And it's been incredible having that process be smooth. And it's been a really good, important lesson for my business is to treat the team onboarding process just as valuably as I treat my client onboarding process. So yeah, that's been a big, great lesson that Paige has helped me with, in addition to copyright. And, I have come into in my brand, as I have evolved as a business owner, copywriting my content and my brand messaging has, been something that's really important to me, and something that I also want to be able to teach my clients as they grow and evolve. And having, being legally protected is really great to also be able to review that with Paige too, and make sure I don't want to worry about forgetting things as I create content and put it out into the, online space. I just want to focus on what I'm best at, and then being able to make sure and feel confident that my stuff is protected is really important to me so I can sleep at night.
Yeah. And I mean, your genius is selling and doing it well and being able to serve like your niche that you serve. And again, it's really interesting because as we've been going through this podcast episode, I'm like, my genius really is like knowing exactly what their legal needs are. You guys can just jump on a phone call with me and you just kind of talk through things. And I know it's a genius of mine and something that I've learned obviously from getting into this profession, going to school, getting barred and certified to do what I do, but also just being in the industry as a whole. It's like with Libby in particular, like you were just talking about copyright stuff. I think people don't really fully understand why copyright is so important and copyright law. And there's so many nuances to it. We're not obviously going to go into it in this episode, but for everyone listening in, I think the big things that if you want to be like, okay, like 3 to 4 things I need to look at. Libby was talking about when you're putting stuff out online, those type of things, that would be a website terms and conditions. And you want to make sure you have some copyright language in there to the effect of you owning the copyright and you as a business owner and if you're an LLC that you are acquiring and owning all of those copyrights. Secondly is Libby is talking about either an independent contractor contract or an employee contract, whatever you decide to do as you're bringing someone on board, whether it's an employee or a contractor, you want to have all of that spelled out really well in your contract, as well as a non-disclosure agreement. I am one of those people that wholeheartedly believe that an actual NDA like document is a lot better for you and protects you better than just having the clause in your contract. I know like contracts can have it and I have them in lots of mine as well. But when you're setting someone down and you're like, please sign this NDA and this is exactly what it means to not disclose my confidential information, that's very clear to people that that's the only thing that they're signing off on a document like that. So those are like the check marks I would have, you guys, if you're tuning in here and any of this has kind of raised a red flag for you, or hopefully you can adjust this in your own business efficiently, is those 3 or 4 things are something that I would take a peek at. So Libby, you're awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. And I know that you have some places that people can come find you. And I think you have a freebie for people too. So where can they get all of that?
Absolutely. So you can go to my Instagram at Libby Rothschild. That's Libby, Libby Rothschild. And my website is the same, www.libbyrothschild.com. And you can grab my freebie on there on my website. And it's the link in my bio on Instagram. And I'd love for you to stop by and say hi. And I just want to say thank you, Paige, for not only having me on and talking about one of my favorite topics, but helping decrease my anxiety as a brand new business owner, growing and scaling my business one day at a time. So thank you.
Oh, thanks, Libby. You're a true joy to have on here. I appreciate your time and expertise so much. So everyone, I will make sure that all of those links are up for you. Go check Libby out. Of course, send her a DM if you have any questions or an email. And she's your girl for all things social media marketing wise. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Legal Paige podcast. See, I told you being legally legit isn't so scary. Be sure to visit thelegalpage.com for all show notes. And it would be super awesome if you could head over to iTunes and leave a review. Last but not least, don't forget to join my free Facebook group for unlimited legal and biz Q&A. Chat soon, Legal Pagers.